All right, and we are live. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Global Citizens. Okay, so if you guys have been looking at my Facebook and Instagram, sorry, so I actually posted stuff like having a laptop searched by Colombian guerrillas and hiding under a car to evade Guatemalan soldiers. Yeah. Just to let you guys know, this is actually not a joke. It's not a scene from an action movie. It's in fact an experience of my guest today is Ms Christina Hoag. So Christina is actually a former journalist. She is now a writer, and she has done a lot of amazing work. One of her work, Skin of Tattoos, is one of the runner-up for the Silver Falchion Award. She has done a work which we will be discussing a lot later. So Christina, how are you? Please welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Kelvin. Yeah, well, good to be here. I love talking to fellow TCKs and talking about the TCK experience. So I really love, after many years of my life, not really, thinking about it too much and what have you. I've sort of trying to delve into it more and how it's impacted me and trying to connect to more other people who've lived a similar experience. So it's great to be here.
Well, that's the main purpose of this platform for the first place. All right. So for those of you who just tuned into this channel for the very first time, Global Citizens is an online show using Facebook Live that I'm either using StreamYard. It is in order for me to invite third culture kids, expatriates, global nomads, and on occasions I do invite international speakers. But the reason for that is because they have spent considerable amount of time living overseas. So the reason why such individuals are invited is because when you are visiting a country on a holiday, yes, you are exposed to new experience. However, you are there as a visitor. So the food that you see is like, oh my god, maybe they have a scallion wrapped pancakes or something. I don't know what that is. It is their local food. They experience it every day. So as a result, that is an experience. Whereas if you are such individuals with multicultural background that I mentioned, every single thing become a part of you because you get to see ups, downs, the positive and the negative of living in a host country. So as a result, it forms who you are. It forms your very mindset. All right, Christina. So for my very first question, I am so sorry, but you will have to hate me for it. It's because it is the question that every TCK hates. So, what is your interpretation of home, and how do you discover it? So, maybe if you don't mind, you can share a bit more of your TC quest, your TCK journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll go through the whole thing. So I was actually born in New Zealand. My father's from New Zealand, my mother's British, and they met in Africa. Actually, in what was then called Northern Rhodesia. Now it's Zambia, in a mining town 12 miles from the Congo border. And my father worked in the copper mine there. My mother worked at the British hospital. So for some reason, I don't know why, my mother was about 8 months pregnant with me, and I was ready to be born in Zambia. But they got on a plane and went to New Zealand, and I was born in New Zealand. I guess to be near my father's family. And 3 weeks later, I was just 3 weeks old, I started my TCK journey, and we went to Fiji, where my father worked at a gold mine. And we were there for, I don't know, 6, 8 months, maybe not that long. I think it was under a year. And then he got a job with a Swedish multinational company. So we went to Sweden. There for a while. Then we went to England, where my sister was born. And then he got his first posting, which was in Nigeria. So we went back to Africa, to Lagos, Nigeria. And we were there for a year or two. And then went to New Zealand, Wellington, New Zealand, and that's really where my memory starts. I went to started school there, so that's where I sort of gained consciousness, I guess. And then we moved to Sydney, Australia, and I went to primary school and started high school there. And then that was supposed to be our last move. But as I'm sure many people listening to this know,
No.
there's no such thing as a last move. So we went to the United States, and I went to high school, started high school in the United States in New Jersey, actually, which is next to New York on the East Coast. And I was about 13. So that's sort of my journey. And then we were supposed to go back to Australia or something. I don't really know, but we ended up sort of staying in the US. Um, and then later on, I became a journalist, as you mentioned. And then
Yeah.
later on, I started moving around on my own as an adult. I went to Spain and Guatemala and Venezuela. And then for about 10 years, I spent out. And then I moved back to the US, to Miami. And now I live in Los Angeles.
Do you believe it or not? That's not the most confusing background I've ever heard.
Well, I'm sure you've had really some really
I
good
think
wild ones.
for myself, I have really easy. I'm a Chinese born Indonesian. I grew up in Singapore for 15 years. I'm back in Indonesia. So it's pretty
Oh,
easy
okay.
for me.
That's a pretty, yes,
But
that's an easy story to tell.
I think the person who has stayed in the most number of country in global citizens is 12.
Oh, wow.
Uh, I've actually, one of my past guests, while she has never stayed in 12 countries, she has visited over 150 countries.
Mm.
So, no,
Well, she
your
beats me.
background.
She beats me then, totally. I've visited about 70 countries. So, yeah, she's totally, yeah. I'm
It's not
nowhere
a
near the worst
competition.
case,
On
yes.
the contrary, it's a lot more headache than what you expected. All right,
Yeah.
Christina. So yeah, back to the question though.
Yes. So,
How do you interpret home? And out of all of the countries that you've gone, how do you discover it?
well, this is something that's actually, I've had much angst over this word home or where are you
You don't
from,
know how many times
belonging.
every one of my guests got angry every time I asked them.
But so I finally decided I don't have a home in the traditional sense, in the typical sense of the word home. So I've decided the home is where I am, is simply where I am. And by extension, I have a lot, because as I mentioned, I've traveled a lot. So I have stuff from all over the world. And I like to have stuff, I have bits and pieces from New Zealand, from Australia, from Africa, England, what have you. So wherever I am with all my things, and none of it's, valuable stuff. It's just purely sentimental things. Wherever I can, take myself and all my stuff, that's home for me. So as I said, right now it's in Los Angeles. I've been here 12 years, and that's the longest I've been in any country, actually. So this is sort of becoming a de facto home, but it's really, I mean, again, I can pick up and move I am always thinking, where am I going to move next? Even though I say, no, I'm staying here. I'm staying here. But in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking, maybe I'll move to
Yeah,
Mexico. Maybe I'll do.
nah, that bug is too much.
It is. It is a bug. It's like a
That
bug.
bug is
It's
really
just
too much.
never. It's like at the back of your head, and it's just always, there. So I'll pick up my stuff, pack all my stuff. I've moved this stuff all over the world, and I'll just move somewhere else, and I'll be home. So that's really the only way I can come to terms with the word home, because
Yeah.
I don't have that typical home.
Yep. All right. Do you agree though that having a strong family bond is the utmost important as an anchor to keep you fulfilled in your lives, as in the center that keeps your sanity as a
Well,
TCK?
that's great to have. It's if you have a strong family bond, I think that's really great. But a lot of people don't. My family bond isn't that great, and I also think that's a cultural thing too.
Yep.
I think Anglo Saxons don't have strong family bonds as compared to, say, in Latin America, Asia. I think they're stronger families. So I think for me, it was a foundation, sort of a platform. If you can have a good
Yep.
family, and then you build from there. But I think sometimes, you just don't have a strong family, or these days there are many non-traditional families. So I've felt you've just kind of, I've had to kind of rely on myself a lot. Just build, myself. And build my own social net. And again, for TCKs, it's difficult to build friendships and social network because you just move around, and you know
Yeah.
always breaking. Friendships are always getting broken, and so that's been difficult. So I've always had to just rely on myself mostly. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think if you have a strong family bond, I think that's a really wonderful thing to have.
Funny you should mention Asia because I'm actually Asian. But the thing is that a lot of my, I think I did some personality tests. A lot of my characters seems to lean more towards an American living in the West Coast.
Really?
Yeah, some of my closest friends are not Indonesian. A lot of
uh,
them are actually mixed race. Yeah, I find a lot more comfort and a lot more the sense of belonging when I'm in a community of different cultures as compared to being in Indonesia. Sad to say,
well,
I even get annoyed at times that I have to stay in Indonesia. I'm so sorry about that. I don't hate my country, but the thing is I think it's a bug that we TCK have is that we always want to feel a sense of belonging as part of the bigger world, as compared to just being in one center, being told how to act and behave a certain ways because we are
mhm.
used to belong to everywhere.
Yeah,
So
it's a funny way of being. You know, it's not the typical way of being. So that's why it's nice to find people who sort of think like that and feel like that. But I think, you know, that feeling of belonging, it's the human need. We all want to belong. You know, we just it's a human need. We want to belong somewhere.
indeed, indeed. Have you actually handled reverse cultural shock, like maybe when you're back in New Zealand or maybe in Fiji? I know you don't really spend a lot of time there, but maybe when you come back there, do you feel a difficulty in adjusting back, or so far being in LA is the one that you are most acclimated to?
Well, when I've worked, I have a couple funny stories with this. But when I first moved back from, I was living in Caracas, Venezuela, and I moved to Miami, and I had visited the United States, you know, pretty much every year when I
Yeah,
was living in Latin America. But for some reason, I went into this big supermarket to buy stuff, and I just looked. I just couldn't. For some reason, I was just so overwhelmed with the bigness of it. And I looked down the aisle, and there was like cereals from here. It was just cereals, different kinds of cereals, just like from here to, you know, the whole length of the room.
yeah,
And I'm like, oh my god, you know, I was like, I can't. How could there be so many cereals? And I was just like so overwhelmed. So I thought, I won't choose a cereal today. So I went, I thought I have to get cleaning stuff. So I went to the next aisle to buy Windex. Now, when I left the United States, there was one bottle of Windex. It was like a bright blue color. I went in, there were like 6 different Windexes. There was a blue Windex, there was antibacterial orange Windex, there was a lemon scented yellow Windex, very attractive colors. There was a clear color ammonia Windex. And I was just like, so which one's better? You know, which one do I choose? Do I choose the one just like, is it the color? You know, do I choose the bright orange or the yellow? Or I'm like, but what's the use of having all these like different things? Why don't we just have blue? I'm like, so I just, it was the choice was just so overwhelming to me. I just, you know, again, I just couldn't
yeah,
buy it. So I just had to leave, and I just had to just like go back another day, and then I knew what to expect. But it was just so sort of, it just like was this big assault on my senses that I just couldn't get over that. And so that was just a funny thing, and I didn't expect that at all. And but it was like sort of a reverse culture shock, and you know, and just other things that I just didn't know. You know, I didn't know that you could use the debit card and you could get cash back. And my mother had to show me. I'm like, what are you doing? And like, you use a debit card for, and you buy a $20, but you actually charge it $30, and then the cashier gives you $10 change. And I'm like, oh, you know, I'm like, how's that working? And she's like, oh, well, that's, you know, it's called cash back. And you know, I had no idea of this stuff. We didn't have in Venezuela. And you know, lol, people were writing LOL on emails, and I'm like,
what
what does
does
that
that mean?
mean?
Yeah,
And I'm like, are they like telling me lots of love? And I'm like, these, you know, boy, everybody's sending lots of love, you know, all of a sudden. I was just like, it took me ages to figure out what that means. So all these like weird things, and that I just had to get, and it was like getting used to a new culture, almost like a new culture again. It really was, you know, just to catch up on different things. And so you just have to roll with it, you know, like moving to a new country, new culture. You just have to get used to it again,
yep.
and things.
Okay, so in the last decade or so, right? What new belief, behavior, or habit do you feel is the blessing for your life as a TCK, for one? And two, have you ever experienced a unique, sorry, in this show, we don't like to call failure a failure. We call it a unique learning opportunity. Yeah. So, yeah, Christina?
I would just say, in general, broad-mindedness is the thing that really, I mean, since I was a kid, since I was a small child, I don't judge people or things, and I don't see things as right or wrong. I really don't. It's just different. And I think that's a real asset. Sometimes I see too many, I can't form opinions sometimes because I see both sides of the issue. And I just think that's a
Yeah,
TCK trait. It's
yeah,
just, I
it
just
is.
don't see things as like black or white. I just think that, oh,
We
it's just
don't.
different. And it's just
We can't
interesting. To me,
see
it's just
things based
interesting.
on direct facts. We have to see the whole picture. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can
And I
relate to
just,
that.
Yeah, and I just think it's just different, and I just think that's a cool way of seeing things. And I think it gives you greater empathy to
Yeah.
people and to different backgrounds, just anything. It just gives you greater empathy and a wider range of experience, or just you can learn from more people. So I think that's the biggest thing that's influenced my behavior and over the years. As far as a unique a learning opportunity, sense of humor is something that I've gotten into trouble with a couple times. And
Yeah,
cultures really can differ on senses of
yeah,
humor. And
yeah.
like one time I was living in Spain and I was with this Salvadoran man, and in Spanish, I happen to speak Spanish, there's a different, I hope this doesn't offend anyone, but there's the word peine. It means comb, like comb a hair. But it also, if you slightly mispronounce it, it can mean the male organ.
Okay.
So
Oh,
I won't even say that word. But so I was like, I just thought it was I made a joke out of this. And this man, the Salvadoran, just looked at, his face was just like, and I don't know whether it was a woman saying this, making this like slightly off color joke, but I just thought it was, and I was just like, whoops, I made a big boo boo here.
oh God.
I'll just keep it, very clean. And then, in Venezuela, I would make sort of sarcastic jokes. You would say something that was, oh, it's really hot out today, meaning, well, whatever, it wasn't that hot. And people would take me at face value. They'd be like, oh, what are you saying? I'm like, so finally I got it. Like they didn't understand sarcasm. And then later on, I read something that in the Latin culture, sarcasm is almost
It's a
rarely,
no-no.
almost
It's a no-no.
doesn't really
It's a
exist.
no-no. Yeah, it's a
Yeah, it
no-no.
really just doesn't exist. They didn't understand it. And but of course, in Anglo culture, it's used quite a bit, and even in British culture, even quite a lot. Even more
Yeah.
than American culture. So yeah, so when you're trying to make jokes in other cultures or in other languages, yeah, I've found that is somewhat problematic.
Yeah. Just to let you know, one of the reasons why I started the show was because I actually have a former British employer. The
Uh
thing
huh.
is that we were when I was working in Singapore. The thing is that by no means is he a bad guy or a bad boss. He's actually the best boss I had. But that sarcasm actually got into trouble a lot of times. For one thing is that it screwed our at least three of our deals, and at that time
Mm,
it pissed off one of our clients. So at that time we could. The thing is that because there's a lack of understanding that there's no way you can start business in age in like in Singapore in October or something, mid October. The reason being is that everybody, all the key decision maker is gone. And I can
mm,
testify this was because when we returned back to the office the following year, there was there was a guy who actually I met in some of the networking events who actually did contact me. They want to use our product. So the thing is that because the way my former employer talk is we don't know whether he's firing us, whether he's scolding us, whether he's
right,
praising us.
right,
So yeah.
right.
So as
Yeah,
a
it can be
result, we
very
don't understand
difficult
that
to.
sense of
Yeah. Is he
sarcasm.
joking or is he really serious? Or
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah,
So as a
and people
result,
just don't get it. Yeah, it is.
I
I
think
can
there's a
see
lot
that.
of time that he says if I don't close the deal, I'll get fired. So I'm like, oh shit, am I gonna get fired? So the thing is that, no, I'm just saying, really? You're kidding? We don't get it. So yeah, that
Right.
does get us into trouble plenty of times. All right.
Yeah.
All right, Christina. So I actually now want to focus on your works. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
you have written three books. Two of the most popular fiction is Skin of
Mm-hmm.
Tattoos and A
Mm-hmm.
Girl on the Brink. So I actually want to tackle on A Girl on the Brink first. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So So the thing is this. Uh, what do you feel is the importance of an upstanding male figure and how it affected a young lady's preferences on how their partner would treat them? So the reason why I also want to ask this is because I've been back when I was living in Singapore, or not only in Singapore actually. This is an issue that I recently tackled with some of my past guests. Do you ever feel a sense of insecurity on how you look like in order to better fit in with your host country? And what would you advise to them? Because when we were younger, there are times that we don't know, we tend to see everything in the way it is. For a TCK, it's already hard enough, but for being a teenager, it's definitely a lot tougher in terms of psychology. We don't know whether in the future it's gonna be a blessing of sort. But the thing is that it could, if you didn't know how to handle it properly when you are young, it might end up as the loss of life. So, Christina.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I do think your male role model when you're growing up, or your opposite sex role model, whether it's female for male, male for female, is huge importance of how you develop your relationships later in your life. And the thing is, with TCKs, we moved around because of my father's career. It was his job. So it was sort of what you call a narcissistic family dynamic. Everything in the family revolved around him.
Yeah.
And it just didn't, it was all about him. So I think it was very easy for me, for example, to fall into that sort of a pattern with a narcissistic man or boyfriend. And that leads to an abusive relationship. The Girl on the Brink is a story of a girl who gets involved with the wrong guy and he turns abusive and she's got to get away from him. So I think that definitely has an effect on young women, and I'm sure there's other effects on men as well. And then it's fitting in is a key thing. Yeah, I mean, I moved to the United States when I was 13. Which is a horrible age anyway. And then for to move countries and cultures and what have you, it was just nth degree worse. And I was very conscious of the fact that I didn't fit in. I didn't have the right clothes. I didn't, I'd never had a pair of Levi jeans. We didn't wear those in Australia. The right sneakers. I didn't, of course, I spoke, with an Australian accent. So everybody would just, I would open my mouth and everybody would, look around and I'd be like, all these kids staring at me. And people didn't really know where Australia even was. Austria? No, that's, that's Europe.
That's where
Right.
Arnold Schwarzenegger was born. So
Yeah.
no.
So yeah, so the thing of being conscious how you look and fitting in is just a really huge thing. And of course, it becomes then your focus becomes like on the outward, on the external, on the others. So I always felt that I never really got a good sense of who I was because I was so busy concentrating on fitting in with everyone else. I think as a TCK, you become very good as an excellent observer, which is maybe why I became a journalist. As a journalist, you observe. So you have to observe the culture, how people are speaking, how they're, the social cues to fit in, because you as a child, that's what you so badly want to do. You want to fit in and have friends. So I think that, again, you're so conscious of yourself, but as it regards to others, that you don't really, it's hard to find out who you are, I think, in a way.
Okay, I recently wrote an article called Two Sides of the Coin in order
Mm-hmm.
to, and I do touch up a bit on this, yeah. Well, when we were younger, there are times when we feel a lot of confusion. And as an adult, we TCK tend to appreciate it. It's because now is that we are ahead of a lot of our peers. The reason being is that having been exposed to different kind of exposures, environment mold us into a certain kind of individual that might not fit in with the mold, or we do fit in with the mold, but we know how to lead them in a different way. However, this is in adulthood. in your teenage years, it's definitely there are a lot of confusion, and as I mentioned earlier, yeah, it might result in loss of lives if it's not dealt properly. So, what would you advise on on this, Christina, on issues that a young TCK, especially a lady, would have would get to do in order to cope with it? It's because uh, I am somebody who do not advocate any kind of pain as an excuse. So, Christina, I think this is much more appropriate for your point of view.
Yeah, I would say, to believe in yourself, I think, and to know that just because you don't fit in on the surface with a group of people, it doesn't mean that you're unworthy, or it doesn't mean that you're less than. It just means you just grew up in a different way, and in fact, you have all these other great things that those people don't have. But it can be hard when you're the only one. I went to public schools. I didn't go to international schools, so I was like the only, this odd kid that came from, I was always coming from some other place, some other country. But that's okay. And it's okay to be different. And it's okay to have different experience. You don't have to fit in exactly to everywhere. And again, as a kid, you may not even like realize, it was like, it may not even compute, but if you really think about it, that you're worthy. I guess my message is that you're just worthwhile. You're an important person. You're a worthwhile person. You don't have to fit in or change your behavior, just to fit in, because this will pass. As your kid, it seems like time is very slow, and it doesn't, but you will grow out of it, and then you'll be an adult, and it will be completely different. But and it will pass, and just to believe in yourself, and believe that you're deserve respect, you deserve to be treated well, and you're not just some misfit kid.
Or you're a reject. Yeah.
Yeah, or right, exactly, or reject or anything like that. And I did often feel like that as a kid. So
Yep. Okay. Christina, so now we will actually tackle the second part of your work here. So this is actually something I might have a little bit of fascination when I was younger. So one of the first ever book that I feel was beyond my age range at that time. I don't know why it's in the library at that time. It was the history between the Bloods and the Crips. It was written by Stanley Tukey Williams.
mm-hmm.
So we will now be tackling on skin of tattoos. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
I do not have a direct relation to this, but I do have met part of it before, because when I was younger, when I was in school, I was actually a school prefect. So yes, if you guys are the one watching this, yeah, I was one of those snitches that you guys will hate. Well, I don't really have the best grades in my later years, but I'm definitely okay. The only teacher who has ever hated me is my maths teacher, is because I suck at math. An Asian who sucks at math. Embarrassing. Okay. No, but the thing is that uh, a lot of that I see a lot of kids who might end up in a juvenile hall, or some, the equivalent of it in Singapore is a boys' home. And
Mm-hmm.
in fact, my former secondary school or middle school has a reputation for it in the past. I don't know what happened, but I do know that my school is now doing a lot better at it. In fact, they became like the standard bearer for kids who might not have such a perfect background growing
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
up, or less than what is considered the optimal. So I'm really happy about my alma mater is doing that. But during my time, it was not that easy. And one of the thing I noticed is that some of these kids is that they do not know why they are considered the bad guys. They just behave like the way they see in a group of peers that they are doing it. And I think if we compare it to kids who grow up in a neighborhood that is less than so, they tend to gravitate to things which might seem fun, which everybody does, which seems cool, but it might not be of value, and it could in fact be life threatening. How would you advise on this to foster a much more nurturing and a hospitable environment?
I think you have to really, yeah, Skin of That Tattoos is about gangs, and it's about a guy, he's a little older than a kid, like 20 years old, and he's trying to get out of the gang, and finds that it's more difficult than he realizes, and that's because I covered a lot of gang issues as a reporter in El Salvador and here in LA. And I think you have to really be, again, not judge kids, just try and understand where they're coming from and why they're acting the way they're doing. Some of it is just peer pressure to try, drinking and drugs and different things. And a certain amount of that, teenagers are going to do because they're exploring the world and, trying to, in this weird stage between childhood and adulthood. But I think if someone's around them, an adult, you really have to try and be understanding and not judge them and not tell them what to do. Nobody likes to be told what to do, least of all a teenager, and as soon as you tell them to do something, they'll do exactly the opposite.
Not even teenagers, even adults do that.
Even adults, yes, even adults. So you have to kind of nudge them, sort of show them the way, but not really tell them, kind of nudge them, just kind of guide. And maybe so I've found that sometimes is effective. But try and be really patient and compassionate. And I think sometimes people, especially adults or parents, they're embarrassed at, oh my God, my kid's, smoking pot. And he's, doing this, doing that. But try and take them, a little more gentler approach to it.
It'll be fine if just pot. Oh wait, my dad is not here. All right, never mind.
Yes.
Okay, I'm fine. Okay, please carry on, Christina.
Yeah, it's a different. I mean, it's difficult for parents and teachers at that age too. It really is dealing with adolescence. But what I've found is the more you tell them no, and the more you tell them you have to do this, and the more you have to be that way, the more they'll do just the opposite. So you kind of have to take kind of a middle of the road approach, I think.
Okay. Now, what would you advise though, if in order to what kind of platform would you advise in order to give these kids a much more safer, a much more nurturing background? I mean, I know there are celebrities like, for example, LeBron James. He recently created a school, the I Promise School, in order to send kids to school, foundation based on the foundation that he built. Dwayne the Rock Johnson used to have a show called whereby he actually directly consult kids or individuals who is at the breaking point of their life in order to be better by him giving all kinds of backgrounds or all kinds of assistance that to get them to where they want to be or where they can be. So what do you but well, not all of us have their kind of money or their kind of influence or star power. So what do you feel is the best kind of platform or assistance that we can give to these kind of individuals?
I think also giving, sometimes these kids are not the greatest at like academics, but that doesn't mean that they're not talented or good at doing other things.
Yeah.
And it could be sports, it could be art and music, it could be whatever. It could be making things with their hands. So I think exposing them like these after school programs and different programs that can give them different outlets, that things that they can excel at and feel good, and then that boosts their self-esteem. I mean, it's not if they're not good at algebra and history and memorizing things for tests. There's different things that they can do in life, and that'll build their self-esteem. So I think a lot of, and also that helps keep them off the streets and away from, peers that can steer them into wrong things. So I think the more things you can develop and expose them to, also, different and expose them to in life, because sometimes they have live in very small worlds, and they're not exposed to a lot. And get them out of their worlds and things. So yeah, these different types of programs, like some of the celebrities do have that. I think Mark Wahlberg has, the actor, he has some stuff like that, because I think he was like a troubled kid. And I think Oscar de la Hoya has like a boxing gym in East Los Angeles. Like some they do have different youth programs. So yeah, those kind of things I think are really, really helpful.
Yep. Just to let you guys know also, unless you want to be a rocket scientist, algebra is useless anyway. So
I know. It's like you know,
Yes.
after you take that, he's like, when do you ever really need X plus Y equals,
Thank you. I
yeah,
don't even remember the thing. Yes,
yeah,
thank you. All right. All right, Christina. So, okay. So, as you are not from being a journalist, you are now a writer, and I think you're doing really well in both of them. How important do you feel is a creative outlet is for TCK? And what advice would you give them if they wish to pursue it as a career? The thing is that we earlier mentioned is the need to belong to a bigger part of the world.
Mm-hmm.
I actually did give an advice that for TCK you need to find a creative outlet of sorts. Like for myself, I have this channel whereby I talk with every TCK who are even much more experienced than myself. The guy who actually published my article, Marjan Al Salon, is actually one of my past guests.
Mm-hmm.
He actually created that blog in order to reflect that stories. And yeah, the idea for me actually to ask about appearance is actually from him. It's because he told me that when he was younger, living in Taiwan, he even though he loved playing basketball, he doesn't play basketball in Taiwan because he's afraid that his skin will get darker and he will be insulted. It's because that was his insecurity then.
Mm-hmm.
So, Christina, this is your career now. So, what would you advise on that? Actually?
Yeah, I think all these things are great things. And again, it gives you, now, with things, platforms like Facebook and all kinds of social media and internet things, you can connect with people so much more easily than before. So, yeah, I think these are great ways to do it. And I mean, I also think creative outlets can also help you express a lot of emotions. As a TCK and moving around, you have a lot of, as I mentioned before, broken friendships. There's a lot of loss and grief, at
Yeah.
leaving places and going to somewhere else. So, you can write about that. You could paint about that. You could, make pots or something. You can get a lot of that emotional stuff out into artistic or creative outlets, or playing music. Or just, as you say, or writing a blog. I mean, that's a great idea. I mean, anything like that, I think, really helps you. Helps us all just get stuff out, and it helps us connect to people in different ways. And I think it helps us just, because as a kid, I was, it was kind of lonely being a TCK. Because I didn't have a lot to relate, people to relate to directly. So it just helped me. I always loved to write. That was my thing, was reading. I loved to read books, and I loved to write. So I knew that's what I wanted to do when I grew up. Um, so it just helps you, gives you something that you can do for yourself, that you're not reliant on having a whole bunch of friends. If you don't have a whole bunch of friends, you can
Yep.
just do, well, I'll just sit here and play a guitar, or maybe I'll write a little blog, or, it's just doing something for yourself that you can relate to. So I think it's a great outlet for TCKs.
Indeed. Indeed. Okay. Christina, this is my last question for you. So,
Mm-hmm.
what three pieces of advice would you give to a younger generation of TCK, a young lady or a teenage girl who could have been in an abusive relationship at this moment, and well, a young man or lady who could be serving time due to making the wrong decision when they were younger? Uh, from your experience, or even from maybe the source of some of your books, do you have any
Mm-hmm.
advice on this?
Well, I'll take the last one. To someone who's serving time, either as a juvenile or an adult, I would say, you're more than the worst thing that you've ever done. You're there because you did a bad thing, and you're in jail or juvenile hall because you did a bad thing. But that doesn't mean that you're a bad person. You're more than that. And yeah, you're going to serve your time. You do your sentence, but you're capable of moving on and having a great life and doing good things. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. And it doesn't mean you have to carry shame and guilt for the rest of your life. So I would say, for that, for a person, either young woman or young man involved in an abusive relationship or in the danger of that, I would say, pay attention to your gut. Um, that sometimes it's difficult to tell whether it's, someone's coming on strong, whether they're really in love with you, or, it sounds really flattering. And these are often signs of an abusive relationship that you can mistake. Um, but if things feel a little off to you, they probably are. You have to pay attention to what, your gut is telling you. And it's like, oh, he's calling me like, he won't stop calling me. And at first it sounds like, oh, wow, because he's so into me and he's like, wants to call me all the time. And after a while, you get like a little like, hey, can you just leave me alone for a while? I don't need to be called every like half an hour. Yeah, because he's checking up on you. He's controlling you and that kind of thing.
Or if he hits you, or if he cheats on
Or yeah, I mean, and tries to apologize. It won't happen again, and that kind of
you.
thing.
And
So,
sorry,
it'll
as
happen
a
again.
guy,
Yeah,
I myself as a guy don't buy it. Sorry.
yeah. So you have to kind of pay attention to if things feel off or they feel too good to be true. They, it's probably off. So you have to really pay attention to the sort of your gut and your sort of what that instinct, your instinct that's there. And as far as a TCK, I would say, again, you don't have to fit in. It's a really it's a different kind of upbringing, and it will make you a different person than most people. But celebrate it, I would say. And I don't think I did that enough when I was, younger. It was always like, I just wanted so badly to fit in and be like everybody else. And I felt embarrassed of it almost. So don't feel embarrassed of it. It's part of you, and just celebrate yourself and be confident about it because it's just a really unique, special kind of upbringing. And it's got a lot of great things. Yeah, like everything in life, it's got positives and negatives, but celebrate the positives.
Indeed. Okay, that's actually all my question for today. So first off, thank you to all those who have tuned in to the show. I've actually been asked why I've never acknowledged some of the people unless they give me likes. Apologies on that, but StreamYard doesn't allow me to see all of those who actually tune in. I am so sorry about that. I really do appreciate that you guys tune into the show, but yeah, I can't see who you are, and also I do not want to get rid of this personal feature, and I'm happy about it. It's because I want to give my fullest attention to my guest who is speaking at that time. And yeah, I need to give a special shout out to those who actually do like the video. Mr. Fuji, who is a buddy of mine. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure how to pronounce this name. I believe this is from Thailand or maybe some Arabic written. I'm so sorry about that. But yeah, thank you so much for tuning in. All right. So in regards to some of the topic that we mentioned, like for example, the creative outlets, if you guys are interested, just go check out in the description box. There's a link to Canva and Lunapic. This is actually the some of the stuff I use in order for me to actually create some of the title cards. Or if you want, there's a link to StreamYard. There's a $10 off or something for tuning in for creating your own podcast if you want to do like what I'm doing. And along with that, do check out some of the stuff that I created, like Two Sides of the Coin. It's on my Facebook page. Christina, do you have anything you want to mention? Maybe an upcoming events, workshops, or anything?
No, you can just check me out on my ChristinaHoag.com and you can find my books there. You can sign up for a newsletter. My books are on Amazon. You can follow me on Facebook or friend me I'm on Facebook and Instagram and all those things. So feel free to reach out. I always follow back. And yeah, well, thanks for having me on, Calvin. It was really good. I loved your questions; were really good. I thought I really I had to really think about them, and I was like, "Oh, these are really good questions."
You're most welcome. Oh yeah, some of the stuff that Christina mentioned, all of her social media link is already in the description box. Do follow her, but if you do reach out to her, please mention that you know her from my show because this is her personal privacy. Yeah. So that's the end of Global Citizens, episode 35. So thank you so much for those to tune in, and thank you so much, Christina, for coming to the show.
Thanks, Calvin.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Bye.